And once we're able to get it out, it's almost like we become free from it. We become free from the shackles that trauma's been like holding us down. We become free to express and be who we've always been when we can like let those like little children out that live inside of us.
When it comes to your inner journey of healing and personal development and growth, no matter the method you use, the vital point is to practice. If you're ready to transform your life and live with clarity, connection, and wholeness, then you're in the right place. Welcome back to The Vital Point. I'm your host, Jonathan Schechter. Today's guest will be no stranger. If you are familiar with the podcast, Erin Doumert is coming back for the third time. She is a somatic experiencing practitioner and integration coach, and she has a new book called The Essential Practice: How to Go Beyond Coping and Embrace the Power of Healing. Psychedelics optional. Before we jump in, I want to invite you over to the Blue Magic Alchemy community on School at school.com/Blue Magic Alchemy. There is a plethora of practices to support your growth and integration and awakening there, from recorded meditation and breath work to live sessions. There are new workshops and classes and courses being added all the time, like the Path of Meditation course that I just finished up last month, as well as a community of practitioners that you can connect with, support each other, share your growth and your challenges, your questions, and we can go on this path together. Community is such an important aspect of transformation, and I'm really excited to see the community grow. And that's at school.com/Blue Magic Alchemy. And now enjoy this conversation with Erin Doumert. Oh, so happy to have Erin Doumert back on the podcast for the third time. Welcome back, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me back again, Jonathan. Always a pleasure coming on here with you.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey that we've been on, like kind of in a parallel way, and then just to be able to meet back up and compare notes and see each other grow, I think is a really cool thing.
Yeah, it really is. Like having a colleague, we kind of started around the same time and just like are building, and you're doing your thing, I'm doing mine, and it's like cheering each other on the sidelines, just like, yeah, go, this is great. We're helping, shift and change a paradigm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And speaking of cheering, like congratulations on publishing your first book.
Thank you. Yes, my first book. It was a journey all on its own, and I'm just so glad that it's out and available and ready. And I feel like I just like been climbing this mountain, and like I'm on the top of the mountain. I'm like, oh my God, I made it. Like, oh, that was wild. And yeah.
Yeah. So, like that was one of the reasons that I wanted to have you back on the podcast, was to talk about your book. And I know that there was some bumps in the road to getting here.
Mhm.
So maybe that's like a good place to jump in and start to share about what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. So I found a publisher and an editing team, and really she extracted all this information to create this. We created a framework together for the essential practice, and all of my knowledge and all of my life's work and everything was just coming out. And I wrote this beautiful book and put it on Amazon and launched it and had this whole launch plan, and Amazon took it down. They took it down because, well, first of all, there was no reason why. And I was like, wait, what? And phone calls and emails and troubleshooting. It was a battle to get my book back up. And because my book goes against the norm, the Western norm, and when these types of books are going against and questioning how our society is functions and how we approach healing, it gets red flagged and it gets questioned. And Amazon wanted to know who I am, what are my credentials, what research did I do to create this book, how did I create this book, and they really wanted so many fine details. And it's just me and like a lady who, and we're writing this book together. So there's no like team of lawyers behind us. I'm sure like a lot of these books that are out there, they come from these big publishing houses with these like teams of lawyers and stuff. And it's just me. And so I was, yeah, after I think it was like 6 weeks after I first tried publishing it, did it finally get back up. But they just kept like seeing like needing more time and more time and more time with no real clear reason why. But I didn't stop. I kept fighting and I was like, no, I have a space here. This is me like needing to step up in my leadership and I'm here to take up space. Um, I am going against the traditional norm. And that's what we need are people like us, these leaders who are creating this new paradigm for everything to start shifting. And so it's back up, you guys, after this huge battle. And I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
That sounds really frustrating for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like the content of the book. So when you say like it's going against the norms, like can we get into a little bit of that?
Yeah, for sure. When you think about, and, I used to think this too many, many years ago, what healing looked like and what we're sold what healing looks like is, oh, you have this really terrible feeling and we want it to go away immediately. It's all over our commercials everywhere. Take this pill, take this medicine to suppress whatever is the presenting issue or problem or symptom. Go to talk therapy and try to cope your way through life. And that coping will only get us so far. And what my approach is like, what happens if we go against that? What happens if you choose? I'm not saying that, people should be getting off their medications without a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not one to like recommend it, but do your research and there's other options out there. And my book is just another option for people who are tired of feeling numb, not having access to their feelings, not able to express themselves. Um, and really, my book was born out of the attempts to heal myself from the invisible wounds of trauma. Um, and this can just manifest in different ways, like impacting our emotions, our mental and just physical well-being. And when we can like address our core wounds of what they are, then it can really like shape us into becoming more of who we are. Like it's like unraveling our true self and unraveling our essence, our true essence. And so it's a process and it can get messy and it can get sticky. But when we go through the 4 steps that I outline in my book, it really has a large potential for massive growth.
So let's talk about like the essential practice. So you mentioned that there's 4 steps. So can you share what those 4 steps are with the audience?
Yeah, there's 4 steps. The first step is really just seek to understand is what the first step is, and it's just about naming what happened to you and just really understanding it from your heart. It's just recognizing what's happened to you and know that they weren't personal failures of that, like of all the things that happened to you and the trauma that's happened to you isn't because of personal failures. It's because they were protective strategies. And so it's really about understanding what was there and not changing the past or changing what happened, and just having more compassion and holding on to that. Um, because when we are just moving through life, avoiding, not truly understanding what's happened, how can we move forward if we don't have a full understanding of everything? And so I know for myself, when I was going through my healing journey, I was like so afraid of like I would just tell people, "Oh, I grew up in a normal life. Like, oh, I was everything was healthy in my life. Like everything was good. I have nothing to look past. And I guess I was doing more like spiritual bypassing, I guess you could say, and just like going to the meditation classes and going to go do, the affirmations and journaling and trying to like be in the light all the time, and really inside just feeling so like crushed. Like, why do I still feel this anxiety? Why do I still feel this depression? Why is it that when I'm taking this medication, I'm still having suicidal ideations, and like, all of this stuff is still present, even though I'm doing all the work, right? I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to do. I'm going outside. I'm, finding community. I'm hiking. I'm learning about the chakra system. You know, I went to Sedona at one point and walked with the natives there and like did some deep meditation there, and was like all about tapping into my guides and meditation. And there still was like something there that I couldn't tap into because I was afraid to look at it, and I didn't want to look at it because I didn't want to feel that pain, not realizing that me not feeling that pain was keeping it there longer, keeping that pain just like at bay. And then once I was like, okay, let's take a deeper look here. Let's see what is present, and noticing what was in my shadows, noticing what was in my subconscious that was actually running the show. That's when everything finally shifted. And I was like, oh, I get it. And that's what the first step really is all about, is understanding it.
I really resonate with what you shared in terms of like, I see this, and I'm sure you do too, where as people start to come to this curiosity and like start to turn towards the underlying issues, there's like almost like this shame or disappointment of like, why did I waste so much time not doing this? Or like, how has it taken me this long to get here? And I love what you said, because it goes back to this idea that we're all doing the best that we can with where we're at and the tools that we've been given. So even though like we started off, sort of saying like, hey, medication isn't the answer, if that's the only tool that you have to keep yourself from completely falling apart, like of course you're going to use that tool. And you don't have to feel bad about, oh, I wasted all this time, or like I could have been doing this. You're in the right place right now. And like, good on you for wanting to get curious and being willing to turn towards things, and just thinking about, wow, this could be different. Like, what would happen if I took a deeper look at this? Lots of people don't. It's not easy work to take that first step. And so yeah, I would much rather celebrate that someone is doing that, getting curious, like, then be like, oh yeah, sure, you wasted, how many years doing this other thing. And um, I was telling somebody the other day, like, one of my favorite sort of proverbs, of the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. Right. So it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and be upset about that you could have done it 20 years ago? Or are you going to do something with it now?
Yeah. Yeah. And also, seeking to understand isn't about blaming anybody. It's not about blaming your parents or society or however you're raised. In my case, if you read the book, I talk about the religion, and in no way do I blame any of them. It's just the circumstances that happened. Everybody's doing their best. Granted, there are some people out there who are malicious, which we have to be mindful of and like be very careful. But for the most part, we really are all just trying to find our way. And your experience when you were raised, or your experience of what you went through, is a process. And it can also be a process of unraveling it and discovering it as well. Um, and which takes me kind of into the step two is to forgive. Step two is like not holding on to that resentment, not holding on to that shame, and not creating this idea that, oh, I should have known better. And we really have to come into this space of true forgiveness, because forgiveness is an act of spiritual rebellion. Basically, like, you don't get to live inside of me anymore. This, like, this resentment, this shame, this I should have known better. And it's really like letting that go and finding those soft parts, those sweet parts of understanding that we have a collective trauma and it's no one's fault. And the way that we can start to shift and change this paradigm is shifting within ourselves first. And then that will ripple out to other beings as well. And like holding that compassion that we're all imperfect and that we all have our where we fall short. Um, and so I think that when we talk about forgiveness, I know for me, I was like so afraid to forgive, and I would like turn to things to be like, okay, I don't want to like hold this anymore on to this resentment and the shame and like this, like for me in this case, it was like being pissed at God and like being angry at the world, being angry at the patriarchy. Um, I would turn to different coping skills, and these coping skills can look like numbing out, eating food, scrolling social media, um, drinking, having a glass or two of wine every single night, um, shopping. It's so easy to just shop right now. And it takes us away from these like uncomfortable feelings, just like, oh, let's see what, deals Amazon has or whatever. Or like, I used to just go online and like pick out a bunch of outfits and put it in the cart and realizing that I'm actually never going to buy it or something, but these are just like mindless things that we do to suppress all these icky feelings. And what does it look like if we can stop coping and find true healing? And so forgiveness is a huge aspect.
It rings true for me. Um, Sometimes in a very frustrating way,
Mm.
like, because when that part or that pattern or that belief comes up again, it's just coming back to that forgiveness and accepting like, oh, this is a part of me, and it's a part of me that I have to continue to forgive and love, uh, for as long as it takes, instead of pushing it away or suppressing it or um, dealing with it in some sort of coping strategy, like you were saying.
Mm.
I had this experience last month at this breathwork retreat that I was doing, and it was just it was even before the breathwork started. Like, I was actually sitting for somebody else when it came up, but it was this really viscerally uncomfortable dealing with this like perfectionism and this inner critic that was like coupled to that part. And unfortunately, because I was sitting for somebody, I didn't really have the space to deal with it in that moment. Like, it was like, okay, I really wish this wasn't happening because I really want to work with it, but I have to be here and take care of this other human being that's in this very vulnerable and open space. But it was like the universe had sort of created this divine timing, because not only did I have the whole rest of the day and evening to work with it and think about it and reflect on it, but then I went into my own breathwork session the next day and was like, okay, like, we're going in with this, right? And even before the breathwork started, some of the things that had come up in reflection were like, oh, okay, like, I want these people to to like me. I want to be accepted. I want to be part of the club, like, which, if you sort of peel that back, right? Like, I want to be loved and accepted. That's a perfectly normal, thing to want. When I went into the breath work, I had this really powerful experience of basically like first calling these parts, these different aspects of myself back, and especially this very young part that I knew was this like perfectionist part, and like kind of bringing them in. And this is where I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable, because this is in a breathwork session, and as you know, in expanded states of consciousness, whatever happens, you gotta go with it, right? Well, at a certain point, I knew in this journey that I had to, like, I was basically supposed to sacrifice this part of myself. Like, there was this big bonfire, and I had to like put him into it. And at first, it was like I actually turned away from it, and I was like, wait, this isn't, like, you're not supposed to push parts away. You're supposed to love them and bring them in. But I knew that this is what had to happen. And as like this part of me was like sacrificed, I was breathing him in like smoke, like he was coming into me. And anyway, like cut to like a week later, and I'm in a session with my therapist, and I'm telling her about this. And she's like, yeah, so as you're talking about that, like, how does it feel? Like, what's coming up for you? And even though I'm sharing about like, yeah, I feel like I made this big like step forward, and you know, just not like, I don't have to deal with this anymore. I'm like free of this part of me. The first thing that came up was like, no, there it is. Like, it's still a part of you. Like, I started to feel doubt. I started to feel like, oh no, I'm never going to be like over this. And at that moment, it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep turning to love and forgiveness as much as it takes. Like, it's not a linear thing. It's not like, oh, cool, you sacrifice this part of you and now it's gone forever. But it's this choice within me to continue to love and accept and forgive myself for those times that I forget about it, or where I haven't done that in the past as much and as many times as I've needed. So I really resonate with that forgiveness for sure.
Yeah, I you brought up some things that were coming up for me with this part of acceptance and forgiveness. Acceptance and forgiveness also look really messy. I just have it in my head that like, oh, just gonna forgive and everything's gonna be fine. No,
Right.
forgiveness is like screaming at the top of your lungs of getting all the stuff, everything that's there, everything that you've been feeling and expressing, and all the ickiness that you don't like or are so uncomfortable with, allowing them to be fully present and accepting them for exactly where they're at and what they are, and not pushing them away. Because we first have to just accept everything and all the things that we encompass. And it's an interesting thing when we accept all of those pieces within ourselves, it's almost like the forgiveness comes so easy and it's just naturally unfolding after that point. Um, that's been my experience every time that I've sat in a ceremony, a medicine ceremony, in a breath work, anything. I fully allow those really, like, whether it be rage and I'm screaming or I'm yelling or I'm scared or these like icky feelings come through, when I can just fully allow them to be there. It's like, oh, I gave them the space that they've been wanting this whole time without suppressing it, showing them and allowing them to be and have that space. And then there it goes. And then the forgiveness is so much easier. Like, I remember when I had to forgive God, really. And um, I was in a ceremony, and Jehovah came through, which was the religion that I was raised in. And it was this like, oh, this burning feeling came up. And I was just like, oh, I need to get him out of here. And I was just so angry and so pissed. And I was just yelling and screaming. And just in the middle of this ceremony room, I ended up just I rate this in my book, taking off all
Yeah.
of my clothes and just laying there naked. I was like, oh my God, I got him out of me. Like, this feels so good. And then the next day, I was walking down the beach and I saw the religion with their stand and all their publications. And for the first time since who knows how long, I didn't have any type of reaction when I saw those publications anymore. That no longer had an effect on me. It no longer had control over me and my emotions at that point, because I allowed it to fully move through me. And at that point, had full agency of me, of who I am. And that was my forgiveness. And I let that go. And I also um, hold no hard feelings to anybody who is part of that organization at all. Like, I hope that they are happy and good and well in those situations. It was not right for me.
It was interesting because I was reading your book last night on the plane back. And when I got to that part, that was really, really powerful. And I think that both of the stories that we just shared, like, yeah, there's another important aspect that I want to bring in, which is that forgiveness definitely comes from ourselves first. And another aspect of it is that we're supported in community. Like like I went into the sharing circle and that breath work, after that breath work, and I'm talking about like lighting myself on fire. And there's this part of me that's like, this is not safe to say. People are going to look at you like you're crazy. Like, like you can't talk about this. And there was no judgment. There was no like, oh my God, like you need to go get help. It was just acceptance and love. And even, sharing that story with you, like I didn't feel judged at all. And you shared in your book about this story where you're like, you tore your clothes off in front of all these people, and they weren't like, oh my God, like put your clothes back on. What's wrong with you? What are you doing? Like there was acceptance. You were supported in that expression and in that growth. And I think that that's another big part of this healing process is, yes, it starts from within. Yes, we have to be the ones to like start that off, but there's so much power in finding the right people that are going to love and accept you in those messy moments, in those moments where we're vulnerable or we're not completely healed, whatever that means. Where we can just be authentic in who we are and be seen and supported through all of it.
Oh, so important to be seen and supported through all of it, especially when we weren't able to.
Yeah.
There's so much healing in being able to express everything with people, like you were just saying, to hold that in that community. Um, no, thank you for saying that. So powerful.
Yeah. The other thing that came up for me was like that we're really changing uh, our response and the way that idea, whether it's what you're saying with the religious folks that you were affiliated with and like they were a part of. For me, it was like that part inside of me, like this belief about like who I am and what I'm capable of, whatever it is. But like being able to separate the experience itself from the way that we're responding to it emotionally and somatically and mentally, right? As well, like it reminds me of like the Buddhist idea of separating, pain and suffering. Sometimes they call it like the second arrow. Like there's this first arrow that life has some painful stuff in it that we can't avoid. But then there's also this second arrow of suffering that we kind of do have control over. We can work with it in a different way. We don't have to have such an emotional charge behind what we're experiencing. Um, and when we aren't conscious of that, it creates more suffering in our life because of that. We're sort of a victim in a way to that experience rather than being able to stand in our sovereignty. Or I love what you said earlier, like that forgiveness is an act of rebellion. That's a really beautiful metaphor, right? That we can be rebels and say like, no, like I'm going to choose to take a new path and do this differently. All right. So step 3.
Mm. It's it's interesting because step 3 is we want to seek to be our best. But it's not really about being any kind of a performance, but it has everything to do with your presence and your full presence. Um, and I also like when people think of like seeking your best, so like, how can I be someone new? And it's not necessarily about that. It's about remembering who you've always been. And now you have the space to do that. And there's this process, I think, I'm sure for anybody who's listening to this who's never heard of it, the death and rebirth process. And when we're going through this, you don't have to be in medicine or not. Like this happens just in our psyches in general. Dr. Carl Jung talks about it, and he doesn't talk about psychedelics. And so it's all about allowing aspects of ourselves, allowing parts of ourselves that no longer serve us. And in order for that to go and for our true selves to come through, or this rebirth of like our of who we naturally were born to be, we have to go through this death process of allowing those conditioning that we were raised in to fully dissolve and to go away. And I say conditioning because that's really what it is. In order to be reborn into who we ultimately are. Because when we're born, we are so susceptible of all this new information that we just create ourselves and form ourselves into what society has told us that we're supposed to be, in our caregivers, our religion, our all the things. And we have to, healing is just about, is about unlearning all of that stuff. So we have to allow those parts of us to go away and to like dissolve and to um die essentially, and
Space.
to make space for this embodiment to start happening, to really like come into this beautiful blossom of ourselves that we've always been there. So we get to show up how we get to choose how we show up in this world. And it's all about being conscious, being aware, understanding the way that we communicate. And that I think is the beautiful part about being our best. And also educating ourselves on what that looks like and how to move and um, not just doing something because I said so, or because Jonathan said so, or because the doctor down the street said so, or because this healer shaman person down in Peru said so. It's really about taking ownership for yourself and seeking what's best for you. Who do you resonate with? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? Taking in everything and letting go what doesn't. And that I think is what seeking your best really means, and what's available, and taking accountability for your own healing and the way that you are moving through this world and the way that you choose to interact with it or not interact with it, and creating those boundaries that are necessary. Like now that you've learned all this stuff that's happened around you, now that you've have all this forgiveness, now how am I going to choose to show up in this space to be my best? And what boundaries am I going to create for myself in order to preserve my energy and to be around the people that I resonate with the most. Um, I know that like this can also be a really sticky part too, because and this happened to me and this happens to a lot of my clients is we go on this healing journey and we unlearn all this stuff and we like dissolve and we go through this huge death process and then there's this like quiet void. I call it like the pregnant void, this like place of pure emptiness. Almost, people can mistake it or go into a depression at this point because it's kind of like, okay, now what do I do? Like, I've
Yeah.
dissolved all this stuff. My life has completely changed. I'm shifting. A lot of my friends just naturally went away because I don't resonate. I'm no longer drinking with them anymore. I'm no longer doing all of the things that used to be fun and now I just don't resonate with. And now, oh, I have to learn how to like communicate and find new community, and you can't just like go down to the local bar and all of a sudden you have your community there. It's like, no,
Yeah.
there's, which they are out there, but once you start to shift, once you start to change and your true essence starts to come through, the people that you're meant to be around with will all of a sudden just start attracting to you. And I don't know if this has happened to you, Jonathan, but it's definitely happened to me. And I know so many of my clients are also going through this. It's like, oh, you mean all those years that I was like in solitude for so long, I was actually like in this cocoon. And then now the cocoon's like opening up and I'm like spreading my wings. And now my community is so big and it's beautiful of all these amazing people that have all healed in one way or another too. And really rad individuals. And we're doing really cool things that aren't involving drinking, aren't involving all these other stuff. And we're collaborating and we're creating and we're dancing and we're playing and we're having fun and we're holding each other and we're crying together and we're being, just all of the beautiful things that you would want, that I would want anyways, is coming through. And I know that this is my experience of what I am experiencing in life, and everybody's different, right? Like I have friends who are like performers and they're hanging out with all their performers and stuff. So it's so interesting, right? So when we go through the death process, we go into our cocoon, and then our true essence starts to unfold. And it's that I think is what seeking your best is. And I kind of probably mixed in step 4 in there too, seek to explore, but
No, I
so
mean, yeah, like to use your cocoon metaphor, like when the caterpillar goes into that cocoon, it literally dissolves into like a pile of goo. Like it's a complete death. And that can be a really frustrating place to be in that in between stage for sure. Um, Everybody wants like the end result. Okay, the butterfly is really great. Like, how do I get there? Well, you have to go through that death process to get there. Like, there's no magic, kind of shortcut to that. And like, yeah, we talk about integration and sort of the end result of integration being this beautiful sort of goal that we're moving towards. But think about what we're saying there, that in order to put those pieces together, they had to be separate from to start with. You're taking all these different fragments or like the remnants of what's left after things are burned away and creating something new. Like that's not an easy process. If it was, you and I probably would need to seek different professions, right? Like, um, and I love what you said about like, it's not that you or I know what we're doing or like what our clients need. Sure, I might have some suggestions, but I really try to remember that like I believe in your best, even when you don't. Like I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna walk alongside you because I believe in your best, even in those moments where you're struggling to believe in your best. And then at a certain point, like, yeah, the hopefully more and more day after day, like you're gonna believe in your best a little bit more. You're gonna come to that place where it's just happening more effortlessly. Um, but yeah, it's not that I have the answers and you don't. It's like, no, it's still there. We're in a process of discovery, and like how amazing it is to walk alongside someone as they're going through that process themselves, you know. Um, I also think like this is like a very dangerous place for people to be in sometimes because you might latch on to somebody that says the opposite. Oh no, I do have all the answers. All you have to do is listen to me or come, drink more medicine or, be in my community or, like things can get really sticky from an ethical perspective really quickly there. Um but yeah, like everyone does have their best inside of them. And I really do think that that's my job is just to help you hold that space and that vision in those moments where it's hard to believe in it yourself. And not to say that like I have all the answers, like I need people around me that can see my best even when I don't believe in it or like I'm still struggling to find it as well. Um and that's yeah, I think that's the beauty of this work and being in community with people.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that you said in this chapter that really stood out to me that I'd like to just point out is that your best doesn't mean the best. And sometimes our best for the day might not look like a whole lot, but it's honoring that personal best and what you truly need. And that sometimes that is the need for rest, the need for stillness, or like a lack of activity, a lack of productivity. It's something that I don't always feel very comfortable with personally, but it seems to be a facet of the healing process, especially when that healing process involves somatic experiencing, is like being more comfortable with letting go of some of the things that we're doing that aren't necessarily like we might be doing a lot, but it's not really aligned with being our best. Um, like, I'm not going to do so much because I'm realizing that the so much that I was doing was coming from this place of I have to perform or I have to be perfect or I have to do all these things otherwise people aren't going to like me or just noticing like that my body like needs rest or doesn't want to override or push beyond its limits and that my best is honoring um that call instead of ignoring it and like pushing through and getting another piece of content out or like editing this podcast or whatever it is, right? And that's a really important thing.
I'm so glad you bring this up because sometimes when I find myself in these spaces that you're talking about of like, go, 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 do, more, my my stuff isn't even that good. Like it seems to be like a little half-assed or whatever. But one of the biggest lessons that I learned from going to Peru and being in the jungle is how important it is to rest and to slow down and how much our bodies need it. And I'm like you, Jonathan, like it's uncomfortable for me to just be in the present moment and to just slow down and to just be. But when I give myself true rest, I actually am better and showing up more productive. I get more things done when I do honor the rest versus if I try to push through the rest, I don't get as much done. I'm even more tired. My sessions with my clients aren't as like on point. And because I'm not honoring the cycle, I'm not honoring like our what we're supposed to be doing. We're animals, just like animals in the wild. And if you have a dog or a cat or look at the zoo, or like anything, anywhere where there's wild animals, they're not constantly going and doing and interacting. There's time for rest, like deep, deep rest of
Yeah.
just being, of just hanging out. And we've lost that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through this whole process with the podcast. I talked about it in the last season. I literally, I mean, you want to talk about death and rebirth. I literally called like the last season the Phoenix season because I got overwhelmed with how much I had to do, but also honoring this part of me that was like, I don't want to keep burning myself out doing this. And when I paused, it was like, okay, do you want to keep doing this podcast? Like, be honest with yourself. And the answer that I came to was yes. And I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing, which is like doing so much, pushing myself so hard, coming home after have been with clients for 6 hours, and then, sitting up editing a podcast for 2 or 3 hours more instead of doing what I really want to be doing, which is resting and recharging and rejuvenating myself. Um, and I was doing that for a while. And so the the conclusion I came to was, okay, what are the things that I can let go of that are not in alignment, that are not me doing my best, so that I have more energy and more space to focus on my best and the things that are lighting me up and the parts of this process that I do truly love, right? And if I can't do that, it's just not going to work in the long term. And I think that's one of the the gifts that my own healing process, and especially somatic experiencing, has given me, is like the awareness of that in my body and the courage to be that rebel, to forgive myself for those moments where I haven't quite honored that within myself, but to say, you know what? And today I'm going to make a different choice and move towards something where it is more in alignment with my true self and what that looks like and how I want to show up in the world.
Mm. And it takes you and everybody else who does this process to stand with fear, to be in the scary, to sit in the fear and to hold the fear with you hand in hand, to let go and dissolve the parts of you that aren't serving you any longer, knowing that there's like something that waits you that's more, or this rebirth, or this something new we have to dissolve. And it can be scary to do that. Like, I know for myself, I live in a little studio. It's my own little studio. I just love it so much. It's my own little cocoon. I've like all of my like favorite little things in here. It's just perfect for me and my one little thing. But there's also an aspect of it that I know that are holding me back because I can't serve medicine here. I don't have a space for that. And so I was calling in a prayer to live with other creatives into a home where it's a medicine home, I can serve and I can be more of who I am and expand. And I put that prayer out and I just sat back and the opportunity arose. And I'm going to be moving in 2 weeks to a community home that is exactly what my prayer was, where I can host more medicine or serve, but so my higher self is like, yes, like this is what we want. This is what been asking for. And then my animal body is like, but no, I don't want to. But we're safe right here in our little cocoon right here. But I know that this has its limitations, and I'm expanding into something more. So I had to sit with that part. I'm like, we're good. I got you. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to do things scary. It's okay to do things afraid. And I think that's all part of it, is when we are going through this death and rebirth process, when we are going through this healing process, the one thing that's hold us back is fear, is being scared. And really reframing what our relationship is with fear and allowing it to be with us and befriending the fear and communicating with the fear and really having a true understanding, a deep, deep relationship with our fear. And I think that's also a huge aspect in this whole process. Oh, I'm afraid if I shift everything that I know, then something might happen, and da. And the thing is, you coming into full trust, trusting in yourself, trusting in your higher self, trusting in your own capability and your own expansion. That if you we just show up every day, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and however that looks, right? Like dissolving certain things, resting some days, showing up some days, and kind of moving with the rhythm of the earth, I think is also really important. I don't know about you, but for me, like when it's winter, I truly go in cocoon mode. Like I don't do a whole lot of anything during that mode. And now we're into spring, and like I have all these, now I'm coming through and creating my goals. So I think all of this is I'm going to get into my course, but I'll be teaching all of this in my course that I'll be launching in May. But um, yeah, and what all of these really, really look like. And um,
Nice. Yeah, the just being willing to honor that inner guide, the inner
mhm,
guidance, not going with what you see on social media or you think
mhm,
that you need, um, but just getting quiet and listening
yeah,
and honoring that process
yeah.
is
Listening
is
to the
a really
whispers.
really powerful way to integrate, I think, a lot of this work.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and I think that your book is a great introduction to people that maybe are new to this whole process and wanting to figure out like what do I do now? How do I navigate this path? Because like you said, I feel like we kind of went back to one of the things I was reading in the beginning of the book about the your nervous system, your body is always going to choose what's familiar. Because even if it's dysfunctional, even if it's not really healthy, it's what and especially when we're talking about, we started talking about, the way that you grew up, right? And like that's such a powerful example of that is the environments that we grow up in, the things that we learn when we're growing up, we don't know if that's functional or dysfunctional or not. So our system gets used to that as quote unquote normal. Our default can be so tied into survival and fight or flight and not being safe to relax and let our guard down that even this simple act of connecting with such a powerful resource like the breath and actually coming into a place of more relaxation can feel like a threat, right? So that's just such a simple example. Now we're talking about like our whole life and changing maybe our career or our friend group or our partner. A lot of these things that when we start to do this healing work, starts to become really clear like, oh, this is in alignment, this is not, and this needs to change. Like you were saying, like your friends group might just fall away naturally. You're either going to see your way out or they are, because they're going to be like, this is uncomfortable and I'm not sure right what you're doing, and it's kind of bringing up some weird things in me, and I'm going to go back to the bar. um, and no shame, right? Like everyone is on their own journey, but it can be really uncomfortable to have to be in that space where, okay, like now I'm being called to do something different,
Mhm,
consciously, unconsciously, either way. It can be really uncomfortable. And like, I think that's where we meet so many of our clients is in those peak experiences. The changes that need to be made seem so clear when we're having that direct connection, that direct experience. Oh, of course I need to leave my job, or of course I need to like stop drinking or, you know, find a new partner. But then the next day, the next week, when we're like, okay, how am I going to do that? That's when the body goes, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is scary.
And I think that's part of integration too, is our higher selves knows what's best. And then our animal body's like, what? And these experiences, our past trauma or our bodies triggering, experiences trying to keep us safe. If we don't address that part, our trauma will only let us get so far until it like pulls us back. We're going to keep going and then it'll just continue to pull us back. And we'll always default to that safety that you were talking about, and going in. So it takes time, and it isn't something that happens overnight. This can be a long process, and it's something that we want to like titrate our way into doing, and slowly allowing our bodies and our nervous systems to adjust as we start to grow and evolve, and not spiritually bypass our way and like try to think our way through everything by living in a higher dimension or whatever is
Right.
out there. And like, no, like being real, like we live on this earth, we live on this planet, we have still to be grounded. And there's these like two different aspects of ourselves that we're like kind of playing with, right? We learn this in SC, like we're we're noticing like our mind and like our cognitive function, and then we're also noticing what's happening in our body, in our animal body. And it will always want to default to that safety, like you were saying. And this is, yeah, it can feel unsafe to be in a state of safety, I guess, or the parasympathetic, and that deactivate. It's like, oh my gosh, no, this is unsafe. We don't know what to do here in this space. Our default is to get us out of here and to run and try to like manage everything or control or to try to, whatever. And when we come into this place of stillness and just full surrender, oh, that can be so uncomfortable.
Yeah. One of my breathwork mentors said something in the last retreat that's been really sticking with me. She said, "You have to feel safe enough. You have to get safe enough to feel unsafe." Right? Like we can't just
Yeah.
rip the band-aid off all at once sometimes. Like we have to feel safe and supported enough to get to a place of feeling unsafe so that this healing and change can
Yeah.
take place.
And I also want to just touch on a little bit that this process is the process that happens on all realms, regardless if people are doing psychedelics or expanded states of consciousness or not. And that in my book, I just kind of touch on it. It can be an accelerator to help with this process. It can help facilitate a deeper understanding, a deeper way of understanding this forgiveness, a deeper understanding of what all of this process looks and feels like. Is it possible without psychedelics? Absolutely, it is. And also, if it's right for you and you feel called to it, it's available. And it's also, um, I always say an accelerator, but it's just this
Yeah.
like really beautiful way of tapping into all dimensions of yourself and bridging them together. It's undescribable at times.
Yeah, it is hard to describe sometimes. I often feel that way when I get to that point in the in the intro talk.
Yeah.
When we start talking about expanded states of consciousness, what are you going to say? Right? Like, well, for some people it might be really challenging. For others it's going to be super blissful. One person's going to be crying, the next person's going to be yelling, the other person's going to be just like, this is the deepest, meditation that I've ever been in. And everyone's experience is going to be different. But there's something to the fact that human beings have been using and working with these states for pretty much since the beginning of time. We're the, you know, uh, unfortunately, we're to go back to the beginning of our conversation. We're in this culture where it's like, take this pill and everything will be all right. And oh, by the way, those like rites of passage or healing ceremonies or things that people have been doing for millennia. No, we should stay away from that. That's not okay, right? But we've been using these expanded states, whether it's with plants or prayer or breath or fasting and you know whatever it is. There's a lot of different methods, but we've been using this for healing and for wisdom and growth and transformation for a really long time. It's really our birthright as humans in a way that we can work with bridging those two parts that we've been talking about, that animal body and that higher self that exists within all of us, whatever
Mhm.
you want to name it, whatever you want to call it. um, I never think that what we call it is as important as just acknowledging that there's something there and that when we connect to it, beautiful things happen.
Yeah. And I think that as we were like sitting here describing, how do we describe these states of expanded states of consciousness? We've been describing it this entire time throughout this podcast. I would almost argue like everything that we're saying and talking about is what those states are. And also, sometimes life in general is like a psychedelic experience. Some of my biggest psychedelic experiences have been completely sober at home and just like me feeling into the emotions and just allowing my own process to come through and just trusting in my higher self. We all have an inner healer within us that wants to heal so badly. And when we can like release control and release that um, our frontal cortex to just like take a seat to the side, our bodies know exactly what to do. And but when we are given the tools and understand how to do that, this step-by-step process. And I think that's what this is, the holistic way. This is the way to healing outside of like the traditional norm, going back to our first part of our conversation. And that holistic way is really like getting to the root and like really coming in through the cause and doing the work. It's doing the work. And um, it's so rewarding when we can move through it all and feel supported.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is definitely worth it. And as you were saying, it can be an accelerator. um, I often use, Stan Groff's would call it a non-specific amplifier, which is a different way of saying it, right? Um, and I think that that's a good reminder that sometimes it's really helpful to work with somebody, whether that's you or me or someone that listening feels aligned with, somebody that's going to support you with this new paradigm, with this idea that you do have the answers ultimately inside of you and that you can be your best and change the past, forgive yourself, um, and that isn't going to pathologize you or shame you or try to discourage you from that curiosity and from striving to create these changes in your life.
Yeah.
So whether you're reading Erin's book and getting inspiration from that, or working with one of us, or finding somebody that works for you. Um, that there's a really good reason that we're here doing this work, and that people turn to support. Um, I think we can get further in that community with that support than we can by ourselves. And it's not that we can't, it's just, sometimes we end up sort of taking some different paths, or, going down this, well, okay, I'm going to go down this road for a while and then realize, oh, you know what, maybe I should have stuck on with the other way, or, you know, um, there's more exploration by yourself. but you don't always get to the place you're looking for quite as quickly.
Yeah. Oh, so true. I think there's it's valid on both ends, like having both like a community support and also having one-on-one support. I feel so much in community, and then I've also been able to just like really go really deep into what's truly here with a one-on-one support and having the tools and the understanding and yeah, and I like what you said. This is just a guide for new people who are just starting this process to see if this is even possible for you. Have you been coping, and do you want to start healing? Um, I have a free quiz, so if you are curious and if you are have been coping and want to see if you're actually healing, you can go to my website and I have a quiz there, and it's free. You can just take it, and or my book. It's on Amazon.
Yeah. That was the impression that I was left with as far as the book. And one of the things that resonated with me, not only in what you're talking about in the book, as far as the content, which obviously I resonate with,
Yeah.
but um, it took me back to when I decided that I wanted to change careers and
Mm.
be in service with people. And it was like, well, what would I have wanted when I was just starting out? Like, what would I have wanted to know? And what's the information that I wish somebody could have just put in front of me in a very straightforward way instead of going here and going there and trying to, like, oh, I'm going to check out this person, do this class, do that, right? Not that those things don't have value, but sometimes it's really nice to have like a clear, sort of path forward. I like to close the episodes by just asking the guest what their vital point is for today or what's alive in your practice or your life. My vital point is usually that regardless of what method we're using, we have to put it into practice. So I'm wondering if we could close with something that is alive for you as a vital point for today.
Mm. A vital point is to my vital point is hyper focus. I tend to work in all different areas. And so I'm really working into this like still point, this place of stillness and of straight focus on the task at hand. And that is it's my vital point that I've been working on.
Hmm. Sounds like almost like a flow state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hyper focus in the flow. Nice.
absolutely.
Well, like Erin said, you can take the quiz on her website. Definitely check out her book, The Essential Practice. I really enjoyed it. You can find it on Amazon, finally. Um, and yeah, otherwise you can go to Erin's site. We'll put that on the show page. It's erindoumert.com. Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast again.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure coming on here and chatting with you and your listeners.
thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment and leave a review for the show. It's a simple, cost free way to show support and help more like minded people find the show. Help the algorithm help us. Also, make sure you sign up for the newsletter at bluemagicalchemy.com. You'll also get a free guide to using breathwork for integration, as well as updates on breathwork, exclusive content, and insights on integration delivered straight to your inbox. Remember, you can go to Amazon.com to find Erin's book, The Essential Practice, or go to erindoumert.com to learn more about her work and her offerings. We'll put that link on the show page as well. Remember, it's not about the method you choose or the pace at which you travel. The vital point is to consistently show up for yourself in practice. As the saying goes, it's not the destination, the journey that truly matters, and I'm honored to accompany you on yours. Please don't hesitate to reach out and connect. The successes, the challenges, the dreams, and the path that you're on. Just email, DM, or this journey, grow, and transform together. Thanks again for tuning in. Until the next episode, keep exploring, keep growing, above all, keep practicing, because that's the vital